Chris Carlin, a longtime voice of Rutgers football. You can listen to the games on 97.3 ESPN, and he joins us now as this hire is really opened a lot. I would say, Chris, it's probably the right hire, but I don't even know that there was another option. Would you say there was another option, or was this the only option?
I think when you look at it, it was the one that made the most sense. And it wasn't just about Greg himself. It was about the program as a whole. When you look at other people that they were talking about, obviously you have an incredible advantage with the institutional knowledge that Greg has. The knocks on him that I've seen are just uninformed ones when you talk about, well, he was only a game over 500 in his 10, 11 years there. You know, through the first couple of years, they were building from nothing. You had a program where there were only one or two guys on the roster at the very beginning who had a Division I scholarship offer, and the rest were all, 1AA. So they really had to build it up. You mentioned he recruited Florida, recruited heavily in New Jersey and the Northeast, and was able to get kids to go there. And I think that, with everything, all the mitigating circumstances around this, he knows the rest of the conference. He obviously knows the ins and outs at Ohio State. He knows what he needs to do to get things done here. There really wasn't another choice that was going to make as much sense as he does.
Yeah, and I would agree. I don't know that this is going to work the same way it did the first time, or if it's going to be the best thing that's ever happened, but it's definitely different. A Big East recruit and a Big Ten recruit are different kids, are they not?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we're talking about the Big East back then. When he first got there, you still had Miami and Virginia Tech. Then they left. Then Boston College left later on, but you also replaced him with the likes of Louisville, who was an excellent program for a long time until they kind of fell off a little bit. Then you had the likes of South Florida got to number 2 in the country in 2007 when Rutgers was able to beat them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's going to be just as easy in the Big Ten, or I shouldn't even use the word easy. It's going to be the same. It's not. I mean, you're playing, obviously, the behemoths of college football every week when you're in the Eastern Division of the Big Ten. So it's not going to be easy. They have a long way to go. But at the same time, you have somebody who has been there on the other side of it and understands what it looks like.
Yeah, I guess the one question regarding recruiting is, do you think he can use the same blueprint? In other words, go down to Florida, find those guys that get overlooked, and convince them. Because, I mean, there were billboards down in Florida, if memory serves. I mean, I remember that whole, there was hey, let's go down there and get those kids that Miami doesn't want and South Florida doesn't want and Florida State doesn't want and bring them up here. Is that a blueprint that you can go back to?
Well, I don't necessarily think that there's one blueprint. Florida is a talent-rich state every year, so, yeah, they're going to recruit there. If you remember, he called it back then the state of Rutgers, which was Florida. It was New Jersey. It was Pennsylvania, and it was New York. I think right now the entire recruiting game has changed completely, so it's not just about that was a time when Miami was a machine.
Yeah.
They still have, obviously, incredible talent. So, yeah, they're going to recruit Florida, but I think they're recruiting anywhere where there is talent. And so I don't think it's like, let's get the guys that they don't take. I don't buy into that mentality. I think they go and recruit everybody, every level of talent that they can. And he was named the Recruiter of the Year a year ago for a reason. So that's what I would kind of bank on at this point.
Hey, Chris, good to talk with you. And, there's a lot of things here that we can dive into, a lot of different avenues. But what are your expectations for Coach Schiano now during this 8-year, $32 million contract with everything that has taken place since he's left? Give me your expectations and then give me maybe the school's realistic expectations.
Well, I mean, as I said, you have to build this program back up again.
Yeah.
This was a program that when he left in very good shape, and they continued to go to a couple of bowl games with Kyle Flood. If you remember, the year after they left, they actually started the heavily senior-laden team and went started 7-0 that year. So, but you're now at a position when you look at what's going on the last few years that they obviously have to build it back up from the level that it's at right now. I think it's a similar situation, not in terms of the scholarships that were offered or things like that, but you are scaling Everest here in the Big Ten. You are. And I think the thing that fans have to remember, and I think they will, considering who they hired, is that it's going to take some time. It's going to take a few years. And that word patience it's like a 4-letter word, right? I mean, nobody wants to be patient. Everybody wants to win now. It's not one of those things. He's not a guy that is going to try. He'll try to, he'll look at transfers. He'll look at everything to try to improve the product, but it's going to be a foundation type building. It's not going to be based on anything else. So expectations, I don't know. I mean, the expectation is to eventually be very, very competitive in the Big Ten and to try to get to Big Ten championships and to try to do all those things. And I know everybody will sit there and say, well, what about Michigan? What about Ohio State? What about all these other things? They're there, but if Rutgers can recruit and coach and do the right things, there's no reason that they can't get to that same level too.
So one thing that sticks out to me on this ESPN.com article detailing Schiano's return here is there was a sticking point, I guess, in negotiations where Rutgers has finally agreed to extensive facility improvements if Schiano can raise 50% of the projected costs in private donations. Can you give us some more maybe information on that? And is there any skepticism from you or anyone else, like if the school doesn't hold up their end or vice versa?
I don't know what else is in the contract other than what you've read. Certainly you didn't negotiate it for him. What I would say is that he's always been a pretty good fundraiser, and I think he's confident in his abilities to do that, and that's why he agreed to that. But the facilities are necessary. Here's the thing that we all forget, okay? It is easier and just frankly much cheaper to build what you need to build in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or in East Lansing, or in Champaign, Illinois, than it is to build here. Something that, a field house that may cost, Illinois, for instance, Illinois just put up an entire new football complex, including an indoor practice facility for, actually, I think the indoor practice facility was there. But anyway, they just put together an $80 million complex, okay? That here is going to cost you $140 million. We know that. So you have to be able to understand that it's just more expensive here. Mm-hmm. So I think from that standpoint, he's extremely confident in his abilities to fundraise, but also understands that you need these things now in the Big Ten. You have to have them. Illinois just built that building. Illinois, which is, Lovie Smith, and it's down toward the bottom of the conference, and they've had a nice comeback this year. But these things need to be built to compete with these other schools.
Well, and Chris, I mean, even with the money that Schiano got and all the stuff, he's still the 10th highest paid coach in the conference, and there's only 12 schools, so they're still way down the bottom. You were in Philly, you've worked in New York, we're in the Atlantic City area. So my question really stems from, where does Rutgers fit in? Do they have the support? Can it get the support? I mean, I went to WVU, where it's, normal for someone to drive 3 hours to go to a game every single week. If I say to someone in Atlantic City, hey, you want to go to the Rutgers game? They're like, you want to drive an hour and a half to go to – people look at you like you're a nutbag. Whereas in these other states that you're competing with, a 3-hour drive weekly is is the norm, right? Go ahead.
Why is that? Why is that? It's because it's the only show in town.
Right. Well, that's what I'm asking.
Tradition.
So can Rutgers blast through that to get to the point where they have a spot, or do they already have that spot and they just need to get back to that spot?
Yeah, they can do that. They've done it before. They did it in his first tenure. Mm-hmm. In 2006, 2007, 2008, they're setting records for season tickets. What is it about here? It's about competing for the entertainment dollar. That's it. And when you're talking about Rutgers doing that compared to 9 professional sports teams in the New York tri-state area, it's not an easy thing to do. What does everybody want? A winner. You know, the Giants game had more Packer fans this past weekend because they're awful.
Yeah.
But a lot of those tickets are sold already. They have to get to that point where they're winning consistently. I think this move really, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, it really solidified the fan base. And a lot of people, where if this had gone another direction, were bailing out, now are all in.
Yeah.
Because they believe this much in what he's done before. And I'll always say it, guys, and I'll believe this till the day I die. You know, when they had their great run, the best thing about it was being able to see that stadium full.
Yeah. And
being able to see those people going nuts, because that atmosphere has been there.
Yeah.
So much so that they believed in it enough to expand that stadium to 52,000. So, you know, who knows? I think they can compete for that entertainment dollar, and that's what it's about.
Last one for Chris Carlin, voice of Rutgers football, longtime voice of Rutgers football. The biggest thing has been keeping kids in state. Now, Greg was able to kind of do it, but there's still the top guys that are like, I'm going to Ohio State, I'm going to Penn State. That's always going to happen, but if you can get a high, is that something that he was able to do the first time? Get those, North Jersey non-public school kids to go there, and then the big time kids that play randomly throughout the state. Like, can he make it a viable option again? Because I feel like, especially where we are, I mean, I don't. Kids aren't like, man, I really want to go play at Rutgers. It's just not that way down here, and that's not the biggest of big time football, but. Is that the key to kind of getting this thing back on track?
It's a big part of it. There's no doubt. There are probably, you talk to recruiting experts, there are probably 20 to 25 Division I impact players in the state every year, right? You have to find a way to keep 10 of them, keep 8, 9, 10 of them. The first time around, that's what they were able to do. But I don't think you limit yourself to that. You have to go and find talent elsewhere as well. But, of course, it's going to be incredibly important to recruit the state, but it is something that they did before. It is a process, man. It is what we talked about before. It is, do you want to come to Rutgers and be somebody who did something for the first time, or do you want to go to Ohio State and be another piece in the cog that is Ohio State? That's how they'll sell it. And I think Greg does a really good job of being able to sell his programs.
Well, they'll open up next year, September the 5th, against Monmouth at SHI Stadium, where Rutgers will have Greg Schiano back on the sideline. They'll face Syracuse. They'll be at Temple, and then Ohio State. So Ohio State early in the season this year. And Chris Carlin will call those games. You hear them all here on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, we appreciate it.
All right, guys, my pleasure.
All right, Chris Carlin, like all guests of the Sports Bash, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.